So welcome back to another episode on the Maritime Training and Careers podcast. And today we are looking at the Cadet Diaries, training for deck, engine, and ETO. And I'm really pleased to say that today we have two deck cadets, JJ from Carnival UK and Ruby from Watermark. Uh, JJ, would you mind just sort of introducing yourself, what your background is, and the company you work for?
Yeah, so I'm JJ. I've done quite a lot of work with ships. I'm slightly older. I didn't join when I was 18 or 19. I joined when I was about 20. So prior to that, I'd done a lot of work on smaller ships, sailing boats, a little bit of super yachts and stuff like that. I work for Carnival UK, as Owen says, yeah.
Yeah. And Ruby, do you mind just briefly sort of introducing yourself, who you work for?
Yeah, so I work for Marella Cruises. I actually have no background at all in the maritime industry. I've never worked on boats, absolutely nothing. I mean, I did Sea Scouts for a couple of years, but that is literally it. Both of my parents work in the industry, so I feel like that kind of pushed me into it. I was really set on joining the Royal Navy, but decided that merchant was a better route for me.
Yeah. So, JJ, how did you sort of find out about the deck route? What was obviously you mentioned you were in and around sort of the marine industry, but more sort of on smaller vessels, sailing and bits and bobs like that. But so, what opened up the eyes to the route of cadetship?
Well, I was actually in Gran Canaria at the time in Lower Anchorage, I was watching all the cruise ships come in and out. I saw the lights, I thought that's really cool. But the only place there aren't lights is up on the bridge. I thought, wow, that'd be amazing to go to. Really try and level up a little bit. Work some bigger boats. And then 2 days later, my brother actually called me out of the blue, and he says, "I've just had this. I just went to this open day at this place called Warsash, where you can go and train and be on these big ships." And I thought, well, that's fantastic. So I did all my applications out there in little coffee shops where I could find some Wi-Fi, it just spiraled from that. And now
Had you heard about sort of cadetships or that option beforehand?
no, actually, I hadn't heard about it from school anywhere. Didn't really see it online. No, it was never. Even though I spent so much time in the industry, it was never something that was ever mentioned to me.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big sort of issues within the maritime industry. We're not very good at bragging about our strengths and the opportunities that are available. So, Ruby, how about yourself? Obviously, you mentioned you had family in the industry. What do your parents do, and what sort of information did they get to you?
Yeah, so my dad was initially in the Royal Navy. He was a submariner, and then he went on to be chief engineer on a couple of yachts. When he met my mum, she was a stewardess, and that he didn't like massively push me to go into the Royal Navy, but I was really keen on it, like a 9 to 5. Never tickled my fancy. I feel like every cadet says that.
No, yeah.
But yeah, it was really true. And we actually have a couple of family friends that done this course, and so it was very much word of mouth. And I heard about it, and I was like, that sounds a bit more fun than the Royal Navy. And that pushed me into it.
So, in terms of that, obviously, JJ, you sort of heard it from word of mouth with your family members going to an open event, and Ruby, you sort of were always in sort of the family. Did you go to an open event or anything like that, Ruby?
Yeah, I did. I came to the Warrington Solo. Yeah.
Yeah, and what drove you to apply for Watermark? Or did you apply for a couple and that just suited? What was the sort of your application process?
I actually applied to Chiltern, and then they went under and were taken over by Watermark. But yeah, I did. I applied to loads of different companies.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, isn't it? Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Certainly do your research about different companies. JJ, why did you go through Carnival? Was that just the one you applied for?
No, so I applied everywhere as well, except for a couple of places, tankers and whatnot, which I wasn't too interested in. I knew I wanted to go cruise. I like the social aspect of it. I thought having maybe 20, 26 people to chat to might have been a little bit not quite enough for me. So, I was trying to choose, any sort of cruise route I can. I was just lucky enough to have Carnival pick me up.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing. Quite often we do see sort of cadets come forward or potential cadets come forward and they've got their heart set on just one. And I think if the industry is where you want to go and that's where you want to suit it, don't put your eggs all in one basket because there are a lot of different sponsoring companies out there and you can read into it what you want online. Different people will say different bits and bobs. So I think what's really important is just getting your foot through the door and having the opportunity. And it is, I, like, again, as a former cadet myself, I think it is a massively important industry, and the opportunities you have are really important. So you're both deck cadets, okay? My allegiance is obviously to the engineering world, dark, smelly engine rooms. But again, can you just sort of go through what a day-to-day life is for a cadet? Obviously you're both cruise ships, and we are going to be speaking to another deck cadet in a future episode who's got in different areas. But Ruby, should we start with you? What's day-to-day life with Marella Cruises for a cadet?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the bridge team because they'll sort of tailor your schedule. On both of my ships, I was really fortunate to have loads of bridge time. On my second week, on my first ship, I was actually put on to 4 to 8 watch. So that was wake up at 3:30 on the bridge for 3:45, work till 8, then 2 hours of overtime, have some food, have a sleep. I was really, really fortunate. I got loads of shore leave as well. So yeah, probably go shore, come back, do 4 to 8, have dinner, and then go back to sleep.
Brilliant. And what sort of job roles were you sort of given on bridge? Because so for those who aren't sure what sort of happens, so the bridge is the main sort of command center almost, isn't it, for the deck officers where the vessel operations sort of occur. What sort of roles and responsibilities were you given within that first, what we call the second phase, so the first C phase? What sort of roles were you given?
So on the 4 to 8 watch, you had primarily the arrivals and departures. So there's a lot of preparation that you will do for the arrivals and departures, and I was kind of delegated a lot of those jobs, obviously under the supervision of an officer. And then actually during the arrivals and departures, I would undertake the admin role. So you're essentially writing down everything that happens.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to sort of understand that there is a lot of glory about being sort of a deck officer, the potential to becoming a captain, which is the end goal. But again, it's quite an administrative role, and actually there's a real key element there. So for what sort of key skill set would you say is required for someone who's going into sort of a deck role?
It sounds silly, but you have to be really, really on the ball because there's a lot going on the bridge and there's a lot of people talking, and you just need to always be focused, always be aware, not get swept up into conversation because you will miss things. So yeah, just always on the ball.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Concentration at all levels within the maritime industry is important. JD, if we sort of come over to you, cruise liners as well, but with Carnival, who obviously have a range of vessels under their sort of fleet with P&O, Princess, and Cunard, just to name but a few. What were your day-to-day routines and duties like in comparison?
So for my first first stint on ship, kind of would like to keep a structure where you spend your first few months learning the day-to-day of the ratings. And so you're doing all the day work jobs. And so you'll go to work at about 8 o'clock, finish at 5. So it's quite normal. And you're doing anything from preparing steel work, varnishing, bit painting. Quite, I really enjoyed it. These are things I grew up doing. So that's, I enjoyed it. And it's the preamble to going up onto the bridge, because as a deck officer, you are effectively in charge of the ratings, and you need to, if you're telling them to do something, you need to be able to do it yourself. And so those first few months are, learning the basics, learning the ship, learning how it all works. So again, this was my first time on a cruise ship. So for me, it was, I can believe, getting lost everywhere and just try to figure things out. And then it came to the end, the end of my sea phase, where I spent a few weeks up on the bridge, which was just completely different. I mean, that was, hectic, yes, but hectic in a sort of organized way. Everyone knew exactly what they were doing. And I haven't quite seen professionalism like it. I haven't quite worked on a ship like that before. I mean, it's very impressive, to see everyone, and just the fact that they know exactly what's happening. They know what's happening above them and below them in their ranks.
I think that is important. A chief engineer once said to me, he said, one bit of advice, he said, never ask anyone beneath you or above you to do something you haven't done yourself. So dare I say it, the first time I got asked to go into a sewage treatment plant, I thought I'm going to do this as a cadet, because then I got the excuse when I'm an officer not to do it again. And so it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? And that can even be down to the simple facts of having that the honesty with yourself and humility to now and again go and sweep downstairs, even as a second engineer, chief engineer, captain, whatever it is. There's no harm in occasionally just making the cup of tea, making the brew, and making everyone feel welcome. And I think I think you've both made some real good points there about humility, about taking in the knowledge from everyone else, and the busy day-to-day sort of life. So if we sort of look at onboard versus shore-based training, obviously your shore-based training is predominantly done at a training provider, such as a university or a college. And then your onboard training, we're working on what we call the training record, but the TRBs. JD, if we go to you sort of first, how did you find the shore-based training to start with? What was the experience like? What was the preparation that you'd sort of advise? How did you find that sort of aspect?
Yeah, so I'm doing the BSc. So I thought I chose to do a BSc because I'd done A-levels prior and I wanted a degree and whatnot. But also I thought it put you in at sort of a level which I felt comfortable being at, considering I'd already been to sea and whatnot. So I knew some of the basics. I mean, these were things that I've never formally learned before. I thought, you know, the level of teaching is very surprising to me. It sounds odd, but I wasn't expecting to have, you know, captains be teaching me, you know, what you do. And they mix the theoretical with their own practical advice, you know, and they do tell you what it's really like on board. And I mean, you learn a range of things, from meteorology to your chart work, which you would expect, to celestial navigation. Um, and you know, when obviously when you're going into it, it seems like quite a lot. But I thought that, you know, lecturers were really, you know, were able to sort of break everything down. You know, you understand everything eventually, and they're all there to help you. You just go up and ask more questions until you figure it out. And the level of support was enough for me. I felt perfectly comfortable, you know, going through the lectures and being able to answer those exams when it came down to it.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the magic side of the cadetship and the teaching is the vast majority of the people who you encounter will have done it themselves. So we like to think there's a degree of credibility there, and I think that does settle you down. I think it allows you to engage a little bit more in the subject matter and actually have that context. I think context is so huge in terms of what we do these days. If you're trying to teach someone and you don't understand its relevance to the job, you can lose sort of interest and concentration. And I think embedding that within the role is really key. And that's a big part in vocational training, full stop, both shoreside and seagoing maritime roles, is the vast majority of the people you come across will have done the job and have that authenticity. Ruby, what about yourself? How did you find the shore-based training?
I, to be completely honest, felt very, very overwhelmed at first because, yeah, I just did not have a clue. I was really, really thrown in the deep end. But again, I knuckled down and got it done. And like JJ said, the lecturers are fantastic. If you go to them, they will help you. They'll try and explain it in a different way. I think for me personally, I struggled with a lot of the navigation based subjects because I'm a very visual learner and I was struggling to actually see it. It just felt like this philosophical concept to me. But then when I actually went on board, I felt like I could see it in practice a bit more and it clicked.
Which route are you on, Ruby?
Oh, the BSc.
The BSc as well. So again, there's a range, but again, with your group, you're mixed in with the foundation degrees as well, and of course, we've got the HNC and the HND routes available. I'm very much the same with sort of the theory doesn't work for me. I have to see it, and it's a bit like when I was doing my A levels. I was going through my A levels, and I did maths, design, technology, computing, and physics. And I remember I was going through physics, and I was okay academically. I was getting B's, C's, and A's. And I remember coming across one of the physics exams, and it was on astrophysics, and they were talking about the theoretical God particle. And I got a U in the exam because I was just like, I just can't picture this thing. It just doesn't work. So again, introduction different modernized techniques of teaching is quite key. So myself personally, and within my role and within BNTA in any of our training programs, we utilize a lot of 3D models, which I know you guys have been on I've seen as well. So a lot of the engineering principles that we deliver, we utilize 3D models, augmented reality, and again to try and bring some context to the knowledge. And again, taking that knowledge from the shore-based training and then being able to implement it in your sea phases is really key. So in terms of the training on board, obviously you've got to go through what we call the TRB, which is provided by the MMTB, which is the Merchant Navy Training Board, and it is a requirement of your cadetship to complete your TRB. How did you find the onboard training in comparison to the shore side? Was it a case of completely different, or did it embed the skills, JJ?
I think they're different. I think that what you learn in the classroom is it's formal. There's a structure to it. Whereas when you go on ship, it's very much you're learning the job. You're not learning everything around the job. You're learning what a deck officer really does. For their day to day. And what you're learning varies. It can be, you might be shadowing third officer. Watching them doing, looking at the next mooring plan, or you're with the second officer who's doing charts and whatnot. I thought there was definitely a learning curve when you're looking at the bridge and you're looking at all the buttons and stuff. You're going, oh my goodness, you have alarms, you beeping off, and you go, oh my goodness, what do I press? So there is, I mean, it is. I think it is different, and it's.
It's a steep learning curve, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
I remember the first time I joined Carnival Goodwill, and you walk on and you sit down there and they say, right, what do you know? And then quite quickly you're like, yeah, I don't know a lot. And the learning curve is massive.
I mean, definitely. And it's when, because all the officers know everything. There's so much knowledge on board, and you just feel blown out of the water. You think, oh my goodness, okay, I've learned all this stuff. I know what's happening. And there you go, oh my goodness, there's another mountain to climb, But I found that all my officers were able to sort of sit down with me and explain things through, and were able to give additional information on the stuff I'd already learned.
I think that's the good thing is because the industry is the way it is, almost anyone that you've come across, doesn't matter their nationality, would have been through a similar program or a cylinder route. So other than the minority, and you do get some out there, vast majority will take you under your wing and really look after you.
And I think when you're joining ship, there's so much other stuff going on, because you're thinking about, you might have a cabin mate, so there's a whole social aspect as well as the learning, and so it is a challenge, when you get on board. But as you start to make friends and start to talk to people, realize it's not as scary as it was when you first joined that ship.
Ruby, what about yourself? How was the onboard training for you? What were sort of the highlights? What did you find difficult? What sort of surprised you?
Well, I mean, it goes without saying that it's a lot more hands-on than your phase one. The highlight for me, I did really enjoy deck work, general maintenance. I like that. I like getting my hands dirty. I again love my bridge time as well. Getting to know all of the technology that they've got on there, how it all works, why it works. But yeah, similar to what JJ is saying, the second you feel like you're getting somewhere and you know something, an officer will come and teach you something else. You're like, oh my God, I am clueless all over again. But if you are proactive and you show that you want to learn, every officer will give you the time.
I think that is absolutely vital. I've got a friend of mine who's a chief engineer, and he messaged me and said, oh, I've got one of your cadets on board. And I said, oh, how are they getting on? And he said, oh, he's really good, but all he does is sit there in the corner on his phone and waits to be asked to do work. If you sit around and wait for the work to come to you, the other officers won't be interested. They will. They've got that goal, but you have to show the drive yourselves. And without doing that, you will fall behind. You won't get the joy out of it. I always used to say to my cadets, go down to the deck plates, start looking under the plate, have a look at the pipe, start tracing it, come to me with what you want to do, be flexible, and they will get a lot more excited about your ambitions. They'll be a lot more excited about your enthusiasm. And if you just don't search out the work, because the ships are so busy, particularly cruise vessels, they're not going to come find you and drag you along, right? So, um, just briefly, JJ, initial culture shocks to adapt into life at sea.
Again, I've done a lot of work on ships before, but never something of that size. I mean, I was on board Ventura, which was 300 meters. It's 160,000 tons. It's like, oh my goodness, that's a ship. So it's for me, the culture shock was really just trying to find my way around. Who do I speak to make this happen? Where do I eat? And it was just the vastness of it all, really.
That's something to embrace.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a lot of different people on board and lots of different cultures which I hadn't talked to. People I hadn't spoken to before. A lot of different people from all sorts of all corners of the world. I think we had 37 nationalities on board. So I mean, there's just so many people to chat to and so much more stuff to learn.
And I think, the ironic thing about that is not only are you training to be a deck officer, you're training to be a human being, really. You're young, how you communicate with different people. We'll do sessions on or episodes on communication assumptions and how it can go wrong within the podcast. But certainly, not only are you learning to be a deck officer, you're learning to communicate, to show, to build rapport, to show emotion, considerations, empathy, and all of those sort of things are a big part of the job. Ruby, what was your initial culture shock, or how did you find adapting to life at sea?
Yeah, I'd never been on a cruise ship either, nothing like it. So it was quite a shock. I didn't have that much experience away from home either, to be honest. I think the biggest shock was you feel like you don't really get a break because you live where you work. But on the whole, I feel like I'm quite an adaptable person, so I didn't really struggle with it. It more just felt weird more than anything.
Yeah, I think it's the first time. I think once you've done it once, the next time it's just it's almost like a normality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those are sort of key bits. So moving on to sort of the training part and core skills, and you sort of touched on this, JJ. Just sort of between you, what are the key topic areas that you study within? So if JJ, if we do about key topic areas you study at university, and then maybe I'll come to you and you can do the key areas that are required within the TRB. Do you want to kick us off?
What will we study here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So within the academic sort of side.
Well, in my first year, it was navigation, and so navigation is you're looking at stuff like terrestrial. So that's actually going over the water. You're looking at celestial, so stars, finding your bearing from the stars, which is quite a heavy maths topic. But again, the lecturers were fantastic. Able to break it down. Lots of extra maths lessons outside of the lecture times, which you can go to and ask for some more help. I thought ship stability and construction was an interesting one. I was a bit surprised to see that. I never really thought about that, the stability of the ship. That is a huge part of what we do. Especially, I mean, that's when you go on a ship, that's a job for the staff captain or deputy captain who will manage the stability of the ship. And so, I mean, again, another heavy maths topic. But those are the two main maths areas really of the course. You've got topics such as cargo operations, and so that goes for really that's all about tankers, and so that's the wet side of things. And then on the dry side of things, you're thinking about grain in bulk, container ships, loading and unloading, hoses, manifolds, which I thought was I was unexpected to see that. Obviously being with a cruise ship company, I thought, well, I was going to learn stuff about cruise ships, but no, you need to learn about everything. This certificate isn't just I can work on cruise ships. No, I can work on everything. And then there's topics like which is going increasingly important, which is bridge resource management, BRM, which we do all the time on cruise ships, obviously, and so that's stuff like leadership skills, how you speak to people. Now we've moved into advanced bridge management,
And you've even got to do a bit of engineering.
Yes, yeah, a little bit of engineering. Compasses is a massive. You know, that's we deal with that a lot. Compasses, maneuvering. So we cover how, you know, what happens if there's an emergency occurs. So let's say there's a mallet board. What do we do in that situation? What happens if we go over water that's shallow? What happens when two ships pass or one overtakes another? You know, there's the forces acting on your ship and in relation to what's around it.
Yeah, and you're in phase 3 now.
Yeah.
So you're about halfway through. So you still got a bit of seed time to go, and then you'll come back in and do your bachelor sort of aspect to it. So Ruby, coming to yourself and the TRV. So the deck side, a minimum of 12 months seed time is the requirement, and the completion of the TRV. Can you just sort of give us an overview of what that TRV looks like and some of the tasks and responsibilities that you sort of had to take off within that?
Oh my goodness, it's been a while since I've looked through it. So primarily the tasks are split into 3 categories, I believe. Your safety, ship operations, and maintenance. So things that you'll have in your ship operations are you'll assist in freshwater bunkering, in safety, you'll partake in drills, and the maintenance can be like how to use equipment safely, like general PPE. So yeah, it's very different to what we learn in university. Yeah.
And of course, there's watchkeeping in there as well.
It's all changing now as well. But you
Oh yeah.
had the physical. I had the electronic version while I was on.
Yeah, so that's been trial run at the time of this recording. It's the ETRV, which the MCA are working on and their associate partners. So interesting to hear that you sort of tried. How did you find the ETRV?
I thought it was really great that you can take pictures on your phone or whatever and then upload that as evidence of you doing that thing. Whereas before you'd have to write it out and get all this, you know, and find another way to prove that you're doing what you're doing. Whereas now I can take a picture, upload it, very easy. And when the MCA requires, the MCA needs to take your TRB to review it and to see if you've been doing everything you've been doing. And now I don't have to send my precious TRV off. You know, it could get damaged on shipping or whatnot. Now they can just look at it online. It's very easy. All of my training managers can see what I'm doing, how I'm progressing. They can send me a little email if they think I need a little bit of a boost. My officers on ship, much easier to get signatures.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting dynamic with having it all on your phone and having it all electronic. It is definitely different. And it is a bit of a culture shock for actually the officers, where they're used to having a physical TRB and whatnot. So it's also a learning curve for them.
It'll be interesting to see how it develops because it's not into full fruition at the moment. It's something that they're driving forward, but it'll be interesting to see how it develops and how it works. So, going on to sort of challenges and sort of lessons learned, what were some of the common challenges that you've heard from not just yourselves but fellow sort of cadets? Ruby, sort of, what have you sort of heard? What are the common sort of concerns or issues or challenges?
Yeah, just from speaking to my friends and classmates after the sea time, I'd probably say the biggest challenge is probably sleep deprivation. Because you're working long hours, it's hard work, and especially if you're doing a long contract as well, like that naturally that will wear you down. I think as well issues with people on board, especially actually no, not even especially cruise ships, just anywhere, because it's a very it is a people job, and you're working with people closely all day, every day, and if you don't get on with someone, that can be really challenging. And yeah, homesickness as well.
Yeah, I think, but on that, I think you do have to build up a bit of understanding and tolerance.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I know it's difficult, and we're in a culture these days where, dare I say it, some people are a little bit sensitive. So having a balance and building up a bit of tolerance and understanding different cultures and different language barriers and understandings is a big key sort of aspect. So certainly those aspects. Anything you want to add, JJ?
Yeah, I only ever heard issues about lifestyle issues, not anything to do with the actual work we're doing on board. I thought, I think the thing that keeps being brought up really is about food, sleep, your social, and that's really it. When it actually comes down to doing the TRB tasks and really doing what you're meant to be doing on ship, I have really heard many issues.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part. And for anyone who's not sort of listened, please take a listen to Is This Right for Me? So we've done an episode on is the maritime suitable for you? Because again, you might be suitable for the industry, or you might feel you're suitable for the industry, but the industry might not be suitable for you, and vice versa. It is a bit, the maritime industry is a bit weird. It is a two-way process. You might want to do it, but you might not be the fit. And understanding the characteristics, the attributes, and setting realistic expectations, it's quite easy to sit back and be sold this picture of it's wonderful, it's amazing, look at all the places you get to go. And actually, you do need to give it with a pinch of salt, especially the engineers and the deck officers. Quite a lot of the time, the predominant work is done when you're alongside. So as a cadet, I got the opportunity to go to shoreside a lot more. However, when you become officers, it can get a little bit more strenuous and busy. So, in regards to sort of career progression, obviously, you guys will be going through your studies, doing your oral exams at the end, hopefully getting, as you sort of said, JJ, the COC certificate of competency. What are your career aspirations, JJ?
Oof, that's a
It's a heavy question.
such a heavy question. I mean, I think most people that are doing this course obviously want to become a captain at some point. If if that manifests itself, I'm not too sure. If that's if I want to take it that far, I really, I really don't know actually. It's difficult because you got such a structure with this course and getting brought up, with going up onto ships and whatnot. And so it's sort of like you work as a third officer, and then suddenly you're doing your chief officer's ticket, then your second officer, then you're doing your masters, and then you're working your way up your ranks, and then so you're inside it, and but always you sort of got in the back of your mind is how do you sort of get off the ship? When do you want to have a family? When do you want to be able to be shore based and do these things? And it's how do you make that conversion? Is you might want to be captain, but you should always have that plan about how do you want to get off the ship,
Yeah.
how you want to go.
And I think that's quite a mature response, to be fair, and we're going to do an episode on coming shoreside. So we're going to talk on one of the podcast episodes about how you take seagoing skills and come shoreside. And actually, I don't think, again, I go back to it, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit of the skill set we actually have at sea. In it, when you think about it, we can't go home every day. So not only are we deck officers and we're navigational experts and we're safety experts, we're also firefighters, we're medical first aiders, we're people managers. There's so many skills. And actually, I think the biggest challenge is we don't give ourselves enough credit, and we're not very good at putting it down on paper and in CVs of actually all the skill sets we've got. And then on the flip side of that is how do we express those skill sets to those shoreside people? So again, there's loads of roles coming shoreside, so you can work in boatyards, marinas, surveyors, superintendents. There's plenty of stuff, and like I said, there will be an episode on that. Ruby, what about yourself? Any career ambitions?
I'm aiming for captain. Yeah, but I like to take things one day at a time, see what happens. Captain is the end goal. But yeah, I'll just see what happens along the way.
It is the creme de la creme, isn't it? It's the pinnacle. And I think for yourself as well, and we'll be doing an episode on this. Women in maritime has for a long time, it's been a male dominated industry, and we are going to do an episode on women at sea, women in maritime, and breaking down those barriers. And it's something that I personally am really sort of passionate about. And I think you've actually got such a great opportunity as a female coming into maritime, because there is a highlight on trying to drive that ethos and bring people in. And it actually opens up so many opportunities for you correctly as well. Not if you're not just getting it because you're a female. So
Yeah, no,
the opportunities are there, and I personally think that there's a big push to empower women in maritime and drive forward. How did you, just very briefly, because there is going to be another episode on it, but how did you feel being a woman in a male-dominated industry? What was it like?
Do you know what? I was actually really pleasantly surprised. I was nervous going in on my first ship. Again, it was my first time ever being at sea, and I was the only girl on the bridge, and I didn't feel like I was treated any differently. I felt like, I was still given all of the really horrible deck maintenance jobs. I was still expected to wake up at the same time as the male cadet that was on board. I felt like I was equal to him. My second ship, just the same. I was lucky enough to have 2 other female third officers. So yeah, that was nice. And yeah, I had 2 other male cadets on there, and again, felt like I was treated exactly the same.
And I think that's the key bit.
Mm.
I think we're not saying that you should be treated any differently, but what we should say is you shouldn't be over-treated, you shouldn't be under-treated.
Yes.
Everyone is on a par, and that's a brilliant thing about the maritime industry. It doesn't matter what level you're on, you're treated on par. JJ?
Yeah, I mean, coming into it, I've always heard that, working on ships is male-dominated industry. However, when I look at our class, I look at the year below us, it's about 50-50 male and female. I look at my bridge team when I was on ship, half of them were female. Our safety officer were female, second officer, third officers. I think there is a real change, and it's not really what it used to be like.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Now, engineering's slightly different. However, we are on a subsequent episode to this, we are going to speak to Sophie, who is an engineer, and we'll be asking her about her sort of experiences. And we've also got Amelia Busby, for example, who's recently qualified as a engineer officer to watch. And engineering's slightly different, but again, it's that stigma around that engineering's more of a male role, and it is changing. Again, there is a big push, and it is changing. JJ?
Yeah, I mean, on ship, I was the only male cadet. All the engineering cadets are female. The one other deck cadet was also female. I think from what I saw, at least on my ship, it was completely different, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And for any young women or girls thinking about coming into the maritime industry, please do not be put off by this stigma, because it's one of those red herrings. I think the stigma's actually not there. It's not that bad. And in terms of, there are instances where I'm sure it may occur, but the industry is switching. There's so much support out there. So, to sort of bring this to a close, advice to future cadets or applicants. What would you say to anyone considering coming into the industry, and just a bit of advice on how they should prepare for the journey, as it were? Ruby?
Do your research companies, research what the sea time is like, try get into contact with cadets. I know that that's easier said than done, but try your best. Like, go to an open day, ask for a cadet's contact details so you can speak to them. I know that I'd always be up for that. And in terms of how to prepare, if you've never been to sea before, I don't know how you can prepare, to be perfectly honest with you. I can say, try and get out of the house, try and spend some time away from your family, but even then, it's not. Yeah, I don't think it's something that you can prepare for.
It's a special environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Both for its positives and its
it's not an environment that you can really mimic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, do your research and try contact old cadets.
JJ, what about yourself?
Be all in. If you're going to go for it, you have to go for it. How the funding's set up for cadets, it's that half of your funding comes from the government, right? And so if you were to leave, you then lose that funding, and you can't. And if you want to then apply again, the company no longer gets that funding for you. So you effectively become twice as expensive to hire. So if you're going to do it, you don't need to rush into it. Make your mind up on it, and if you're going to go for it, be all in.
And like you said, JJ, if we use you as an example, you don't have to come in at 16, 17, 18. I often say to people, go enjoy your teenage life a bit first, go get it out of your system, as it were, and go do your A levels, go and explore, go travel a little bit, whatever you want. It's a saying I often say, not everyone goes straight up Mount Everest, right? Lots of people take the long way. You have to find your own route. And I think that's really key. So one thing, very quickly, just to close, Ruby, one thing you would have told yourself again when applying. So where you were now, what would you have told your pre-sea self?
Appreciate yourself. Oh, it sounds really corny, but probably you're gonna love it. And yeah, knuckle down. You'll be fine. Yeah.
JJ, prease yourself. What would you say to yourself?
Take every opportunity, enjoy it. It is fun, you do get time off shit. It's not all work. There is play involved as well. But when you work, when you play, keep them separate.
Brilliant. Can I just say thank you both very, very much for coming to do this. It's not always the easiest thing. And thank you very much for to Watermark and to Carnival for approving you guys taking part in this. And as always, if anyone's listening and they wish to donate any money to our charity of the year, please do just go down to the bottom of our podcast website or the details within the YouTube comment section and donate anything you can. Thank you very much for listening and see you next time.